Hey, welcome to Slow News Day. I'm Steve Poikinen. I am joined tonight live with my good friend Jason Carney. Jason, what's happening, man?
Back-to-back days. Who would have thought it, man? Who would have thunk it?
Shit. So last night during the live stream, you made the point more than once that there were a certain number of Democratic presidential candidates that were, if I'm quoting you right, a joke. And while I agree with you 100%, um, there's some nefarious shit going on with the DNC in terms of how they're setting up their who gets to be on what debate, and there's some media blackouts, and there's a lot of intentional misinformation being put out about some of the more right-wing candidates with the D next to their name. So let's fucking jump into that, man. Why don't you go ahead and run it down a little bit?
All right, we talked a little bit before the show on how we wanted to break it down, and you wanted to go the full Monty. So I've
Oh,
got
you
the
know what?
list.
You know what? Real quick before we start, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No worries.
It is Memorial Day. I do need to mention the Memorial Day Massacre of 1937, where steel workers met met to march for better worker rights. What had happened was that the largest steel mill in Chicago had signed a bullshit contract with some weak union bosses. And the smaller steel mills got together. There were about 1,500 people that met on Memorial Day to march. They got towards United Steel or U.S. Steel. I can't remember which.
U.S. Steel.
Thank you, U.S. Steel. You want to go ahead and look up who owned U.S. Steel at the time?
Yeah, I guarantee it was one of the assholes. Let's say.
So let's but to better set the stage, you got 1,500 people marching.
Carnegie.
Carnegie. Okay,
Yeah,
either Carnegie or Rockefeller. In my mind.
All the same.
Yeah.
White and rich.
So Carnegie owned U.S. Steel. They're marching towards it. The Chicago Police Department blocks the road, and it's tense for a little bit. And all of a sudden, the Chicago police open fire, break out clubs, start stomping and beating people. At the end of it, 10 people were shot dead. Over 100 people were injured. I think up to 40 were shot or had bullet wounds. 10 dead. And they want you to remember how the United States drops bombs made of food baskets and hugs. And I would like to remember the people that stood up for their labor rights and stood with their brothers and sisters and stood with their comrades and paid the ultimate price for that. So happy Memorial Day.
Indeed. Indeed. And I'll go from the military end since my background is United States Army. Um, Basically, just to take a moment and think about all those, whether or not they were enthused or not, that lost their lives in conflict. It wasn't their war. It wasn't something that they personally went out there and started. Most of them probably wouldn't have had a beef with the other side, or hell, even knew the other side existed, if not for the United States interventionist policies and their pursuit of economic hegemony. Um, Taking a moment and no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, no matter what your ideology is, realizing that not only soldiers died, but innocent civilians, innocent people on all sides, etc. Just take a moment and think about that and how best we can try to prevent any more of that crap happening through political processes, through petition, through protest, through whatever we need to do to end the stupidity that is war. That's all I got.
That's all you got. All right. Well, so back to what we were going to talk about. I think I made it pretty clear how I feel about this presidential election. But if anybody's confused, if you've seen people put out their top 5 presidential candidate list, I will do that for you right now. My number one choice for the outcome of the 2020 election is a worker uprising. My second choice would be a worker uprising featuring guillotines. My third choice would be Giant Meteor.
Oh, yeah.
After Giant Meteor, I will go with Tulsi Gabbard and Mike Gravel's Weed Jar. And failing that, I would vote for a Bernie Sanders Tulsi Gabbard ticket under duress. But having said that, let's dig into the fucking clown car. And I know you kind of wanted to not talk about too many of the third tier candidates, but we're going to anyway because Tulsi Gabbard and Mike Gravel are both polling between 6% in one DFA poll to 1% or less, depending on who's rigging the Daily Kos that day.
Well, the key part is basically how I want to structure this. Everybody knows that's on the left or within politics in general, my style. I do a lot of analysis. I break things down. I'm like Nate Silver, but I'm actually writing things. And I actually don't have a bunch of people working for me to give me answers. So what I did was I broke it down into a 3-tier system. The first tier is more than likely who you're going to see after whatever process. Those candidates are going to be the ones that you're going to see one of their names as the Democratic nominee. The second tier is kind of those ones at the cusp. They're either going to make a huge push, jump on one of the top tier candidates' faux pas and mistakes and slide in there. Something would have to happen pretty substantial, but there is a possibility of them becoming the Democrat nominee. And then on the other half of that is more than likely they're going to slip into obscurity, probably by South Carolina. That would be your second tier. Third tier is kind of like, well, thanks for showing up. You added color to the conversation, and that's nothing to do with race, but that's all to do with you brought in some lively debate, you brought in some lively talk. Here's your parting gift. Bye-bye. So that's your third tier. And what I want to start with is our third tier, because these people are just taking up space. And as Steve and I spoke about last night, many of them are faux progressives meant to kind of splinter any type of Sanders or Gabbard votes that may come along and propel those two candidates in the top tier. Bernie already being in there, but Gabbard could use a lot of that help to get into that first tier. But let's start with Bennett, Governor Bennett, or excuse me, Michael Bennett, U.S. Senator, Colorado. He's a quote-unquote quiet moderate who has tended to operate in the background of the Senate until he let loose on Ted Cruz with a viral rant during the government shutdown. He was the superintendent of Denver Public Schools before he was appointed to the Senate. Now, mind you, appointed to the Senate. And with Bennett, he's not going to go anywhere. Let's be real, 100% real. He is a boring, vanilla, moderate senator from Colorado whose claim to fame is getting into an argument with Ted Cruz. If you were to do that, then if you were to use that as kind of the premise of being elected president, then literally the entire universe has argued with Ted Cruz at some point. So he's the no-go. Let's go with our next one. Andrew Yang. He's made some waves with universal basic income.
Oh.
And
we could talk a little bit about Andrew Yang and his universal basic income if you like.
This is the give or take. I'm not going to go through the whole list without some interjection. And if the audience wants to come in with questions or comments about this, that'd be greatly appreciated, because I really want to kind of have something to bounce off of. Andrew Yang's an entrepreneur. He's a Democrat. He's 44 years old. He turned a small testing company into a multi-million-dollar venture. He wants to prepare for the future of an automated America by making universal basic income a reality. And if that is the only thing that you're running off of as a solution to what currently ails this country, Andrew Yang, he's a flavor of the moment. He's kind of like Beto O'Rourke when he came into the race. A lot of wow, and then you actually start to learn about him, and you're like, oh, okay. Go ahead, Steve, with your thoughts on Mr. Yang, the entrepreneur.
Okay. So let's talk about this a little bit, because there is I don't know if you ever saw the movie Death to Smoochie or not. Okay.
Yes, one of Robin Williams' best movies.
It is a cinematic classic. It was
Right.
written and directed by Danny DeVito, and Edward Norton is in it. There's a ton of other great people in it too.
Brilliant movie.
But there's a moment where Rainbow Randolph, played by Robin Williams, is confronting his ex-lover, who is now Ed Norton's lover.
Right.
And he says something, makes a sex joke or something like that, and she says, "Please, I've had firmer handshakes." And he says, "It might be small, but it's fierce." And I would like to liken Andrew Yang's internet presence to that particular moment in Death to Smoochie, where Robin Williams defending the tininess of his member says it might be small, but it's fierce. That's Andrew Yang's online presence. And God, man, like, if I wasn't so convinced that half of them were just fucking around and from 4chan and 8chan in the first place, like, I would engage more with them. But here's the thing. You're right. That's about all that Andrew Yang is running on is universal basic income. On his website, he says that it will one day replace the social safety net, which is what people have been warning about with UBI from the fucking beginning, particularly given the fact that the Cato Institute has published a policy, a working paper on it, using it as that exact same thing. As implemented by Andrew Yang, UBI would be a Cato Institute fantasy.
ACA
100%.
essentially all over again. ACA all over again. Heritage Foundation
Well,
all over it.
that's the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is this Congress's ACA. Andrew Yang's UBI.
One thing I want to throw in real quick. I'm going to tell you and your audience when these people declared. Why is that important? Because some candidates have declared as far back as 2017. And if they haven't gotten any momentum, they haven't gotten into the upper echelon yet. That's another reason why I factor them into my third tier. Sorry to interrupt. Go, Steve.
Oh, it's cool. I've had Steve Grumbine on the podcast, and I've had Nick Maslow on the podcast, and Savage Joy, our friend, to an extent, at least, as part of the Real Progressives Network. She doesn't really talk about MMT a lot, but
there are a few of us.
But she knows the score, and she can shut somebody down when it comes to how the federal government is funded and how they spend their money, and every time I start to talk about this, had Johnny Axam, I fuck his name up every time. But from the Fight for FJG, Fight for Federal Jobs Guarantee, what economists that even Bernie Sanders is turning to, like Stephanie Kelton, and Pavlina Cherneva, and Warren Mosler himself is not an economist, but Ellis Winningham and Bill Mosler, those guys. You can have a universal basic income in tandem with a federal jobs guarantee.
Right.
But a standalone UBI as is 100% bullshit. It is a right-wing plan. And for the people in the Yang Gang that aren't part of 4chan or 8chan, who are just kind of swept up by the idea of universal basic income, if you're just now finding out about it, please go look up the Cato Institute policy paper on it and get an idea of what UBI would look like as implemented by Andrew Yang. A federal jobs guarantee not only operates using real resources, which is our ability to create labor, but it sets a wage floor, and it generates the amount of income necessary to implement a UBI.
Right. No,
that's about where
totally
I sit on
there. But Mr. Yang, the entrepreneur, the 44-year-old Democrat, declared November 6, 2017. And he's still not even registering amongst voters. So at the end of the day, that's why I throw him in my third tier status. By the time the election goes around, he'll have campaigned for 3 years if he's in that far. And he hasn't really gotten any excitement. People aren't losing their minds. UBI is not a basic thing to run off of. Now, if you were to use UBI in tandem with the federal jobs guarantee, as you said, or as a part of another major wholesale program, it's a great supplemental program. It really is. But to put it as the sole safety net is both moronic and short-sighted. And I
Well,
don't
it's
care if you
sociopathic is
are
what it is. It's intentionally harmful.
right. I totally agree. I mean,
It's, I mean, we're at a point where we need to start calling bad policy sadistic. That when people referred to before the press got completely shut down and wasn't allowed to say anything bad about George Bush, they would talk about draconian policy. And then when they were allowed to say something bad about George Bush again, they brought back the word draconian. They said torture out loud in the public square and in their outlets. And we've gone so far away from that. The Gina fucking Haspel has a job and not a cell.
all right. What can you say to that? So next on my list of our third tier wonders, the people that are not going to register and you're not going to see them come convention time, is Marianne Williamson. You may be asking yourself, who is Marianne Williamson? And let me tell you who Marianne Williamson is. She's an American author. She's a lecturer and an activist. She has written 13 books, including four New York Times #1 bestsellers. She's the founder of Project Angel Food, a volunteer food delivery program that serves homebound people with AIDS and other life-threatening illnesses. And also, interestingly enough, she declared January 28th, 2019. She's 66. And her main claim, her tagline for what's wrong with this country and how she could better serve it as the Democratic nominee for President of the United States is American politics are disconnected from the heart. She's a self-help guru who's giving you self-help platitudes as the premise of her campaign. I don't care if she just announced yesterday and had a Bernie Sanders-esque haul of money. Let's be real. She's never leaving third tier status. I don't even see her making it much into July and August.
Has she even qualified for the debates? I don't know if she's even qualified for the debate.
I don't think so.
Yeah, and we can get into that a little bit more later. My only thing that I really know about Marianne Williams, I've heard her name tangentially since I've lived in California, but more as like someone who was peddling woo and not, a serious political figure. She went on Jimmy Dore's show. Did you see that?
Oh no.
Okay. Jimmy Dore was doing a live stream. She came on. They got on to Julian Assange, and she started doing this but both sides thing, and but he's this, and Jimmy Dore shut her down. Like, let her fucking have it. To his credit, really would just took a fucking stand. Wasn't mean, it wasn't like insulting or brutal or any of that shit, but it was just like, no, this is bullshit, and here's why. And she, but with her tail tucked, was like, oh, I'll look into it.
Right.
And I'm open to having a changed mind about it, but, right. Like a fucking boat backing up.
Well, I'm sorry. Anybody whose main campaign is around a self-help platitude is just nonsense to me. It really is.
Well,
reminds me of, I don't know if everybody remembers.
There's somebody else that, there's a couple other like bigger candidates that are trying to fucking pitch hearts and flowers and cooperation, kumbaya, So Marianne Williams is not offering that approach. She's fucking, if you can sell a book that way, you can sell, yourself to a handful of delegates at least. Give you something to bargain with at the convention.
Trust me, you're going to want to save on Miss Williamson. She's kind of irrelevant at this place because this next candidate I have in the third tier is really going to get your blood boiling, because I know how near and dear anything associated with Russiagate is to you. And that would be four-term U.S. Representative Eric Swalwell, who represented Alameda, Bay Area, things of that nature, for 4 terms. And essentially, he, as I said, with the Russiagate situation, for anybody in the audience who isn't aware, he's risen to prominence as a member of the House Intelligence Committees defending the Russian investigation and taking on Trump. Did we mention that he was born in Iowa? That was what they wrote, not what I wrote. And then the New York Times goes more in depth. Um, he amazed the world by unseating Pete Stark, a 40-year incumbent in a solidly Democratic district in the first election cycle under California's top two, the jungle primary system, which I'm not totally opposed to. His profile has grown within Congress as a member of the House Intelligence, as I told you. He's a frequent critic and a mainstay on MSNBC. He's essentially from a generation that solves big problems in the private sector, but has lost faith that government can do it when it comes to healthcare, education, and reducing gun violence. He's a young candidate. He's a Pelosi-esque establishment type. Don't let the Bay Area fool you. It used to be a liberal bastion, not so much anymore. And his 4 terms, he has no notable achievements other than going after Trump and defending Russia, the Russian investigation. That's about it. I'll let Steve go crazy here because I just know he loves more than anything to bask in the glow of all those associated with Russiagate. So Steve, floor is yours. Go crazy.
So if you're gonna sit and peddle a conspiracy for over 2 years, you better be damn sure that you've done your job reeling your audience in so that you can keep some of them when you're flat the fuck out exposed. And for someone to be running for president, doubling down on Russiagate at this point, shows how desperate they are to maintain a narrative that's crumbling before everybody's eyes. There's nothing unique or special about Eric Swalwell. He was a fucking developer's best friend in the Bay Area. He's responsible for a good number of the raised rents and fucking homeless
gentrification.
He anywhere else he'd be a Republican, you know that. If we weren't in a fucking cartoon, we would have a political spectrum that if it didn't mirror,
he'd be right of center. He'd be right of center for sure.
But here's the thing, and I wanna point this out. You've mentioned candidates from California, New York, Iowa, Montana, which I can only assume anyone running from Montana is doing so for their own ego or a land development deal, you know, or maybe, yeah. But it's important to note where they're from because they're not there to be taken seriously. They're there to peel votes and delegates, and that's what they're there for. And an Iowa boy who has some California recognition, even though Camillary is at a steady 3rd place in her home state right now. You know, he's still there to peel some votes, and he's still there to peel some delegates. It's about what happens behind the scenes between 1st and 2nd round of the convention.
Right. And Swalwell declared April 8th, 2019. So he's a relative newcomer to the game. Followed up with, I know somebody you're going to love too. He became popular when he challenged Nancy Pelosi last election cycle for Speaker of the House and was able to accrue some votes. He declared on April 4th, 2019, and that is Representative from the state of Ohio, Tim Ryan. He's 45. And again, the biggest thing that he did was challenge Speaker Pelosi for, at the time, minority leadership position. And he's some of his bio is wanting to emphasize bringing jobs back to manufacturing, keeping jobs in the U.S., which is a populist position that most everybody's going to hold. he criticizes Trump's record and approach, saying the president wants to go back.
Let me interrupt you real quick. I'm going to guess that he's for good things and against bad things.
Wait a minute. Let me read. Yep, that checks out. That checks out. Almost word for word.
I honestly, I could not give a fuck less about Tim Ryan. I really
doing this for the audience benefit. Essentially, he's another. His big call is to bring this nation together. That the only way we're going to be able to do anything is if we unify, which is code speak for follow the establishment order. Progressives, shut the fuck up, and let's get in line. Let's try to woo some Republicans. Let's do the failed Clinton method of 2016, the failed third way centrist attempts at winning the White House. That's a summation of our friend, or Representative Ryan from Ohio. Go crazy, Steve.
Oh, I mean, really, dude, I couldn't give a fuck less about this guy. I couldn't. I don't. He's fucking another milquetoast face in a state where they probably like him at home, which is a key delegate state, Ohio, and he's going to do his job. He's going to peel some votes, maybe, or he's going to drop out, but he's going to get either a nice consulting gig or he's going to get, he'll get to cover some shit on MSNBC. He's in the third tier because why would he be a serious candidate? Why would the guy from Montana be a serious candidate?
Right. And that's kind of what I want to do for the audience. Give them some non-biased, true analysis on who the viable candidates are and who aren't. And so that they can start looking at them. I'm probably going to get yelled at by fans of these people, and I don't care because you're morons for supporting them in the first place. But let me get back to Representative Moulton from the state of Massachusetts. And I wouldn't blame anybody for going, who? He declared April 22nd, 2019, and his claim to fame, if you will. And I respect the hell out of this. Don't get me wrong. Whenever you go overseas and serve, I've got no issue from that front. He's a former Marine Corps infantry officer, so he was in the stink, if you will. Combat veteran, carried his military experience throughout his political career in hopes it will resonate with voters in the 2020 presidential election. Quote unquote, I believe it's time for a new generation of leadership in our politics, Moulton said to Insider. I believe we need a nominee for our party who can not only beat Donald Trump, but can bring the party and country back together. Again, the unifying call. And he's out of the 6th Congressional District in Massachusetts. He ran uncontested last year. That's a Democratic machine in Massachusetts for you, kind of like in California. And his claim to fame is, and there's nothing wrong with this, but he hasn't really done much beyond it, as a former infantry officer who did a tour overseas. He's not unique because there's another candidate I could think of right off the bat that has much more popular support from the left and progressives. Do I need to mention any names at this point? This is another third-tier person. He declared relatively recently, about a month ago. I don't see it. Your thoughts on Representative Moulton?
Okay, because I already forgot his name. But you know what we really need, Jay, is we really need an imperialist who wants to work with Republicans. That's what we've been missing in presidential candidates these last several decades is an imperialist who wants to work with. Fuck that guy. He was Marine infantry. That's great, dude. That means he got crayons in his fucking MRE and he ate every single fucking one of them.
Being an Army guy, I love you for that statement. I call them my favorite bullet stoppers, but that one's much better.
Oh, Jesus.
Much better.
The few, the proud, the dead on the beach. But no, whatever, dude. Where's he from again? Massachusetts. I don't know why. I did other than to prep for his Senate run or maybe get a little bit more FaceTime.
Pretty much. Okay, I've got a surprise or two for you in the third tier, and I'm thinking about holding off on mentioning the two surprises until I wrap up the third. So we're going to go with Mayor Wayne Messam. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mayor of Miramar, Florida, who made waves a couple of weeks back with his announcement and his campaign's ineptitude on reporting exactly how much his campaign had brought in. I believe he substantially went over on what he actually brought in, and the sad part was the substantially over was something like $45,000, and he brought in not even that. You can take that for what it's worth. He's the son of immigrants. He's hoping voters' thirst for outsiders extends to his bid for president, which focuses on education costs and gun control. He was also part of Florida State's 1993 National Championship football team, Go Seminoles, and he declared on March 28th, 2019. Your thoughts? I mean, there's not really.
I guess they needed somebody from Florida to run for president.
That's my only rationale.
I don't know. I mean, we know how fucking corrupt the DNC is. We know how fucking intentionally out of touch the DCCC is. We know that every time one of these guys comes out and backpedals a little bit more from a Medicare for all stance, that they turn up with a bunch of healthcare lobbyists, a bunch of pharma executives, they go and they get flown to fucking a compound to spend a weekend getting massages and wine and dinner and all that kind of shit put on by a healthcare lobby. That's what these, that's what they do. So why the, fucking, yeah, I guess Florida needed a candidate, and like the only other one they know is Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and nobody wants to fucking get anywhere near her.
No, she's definitely nuclear fallout. She's going to be radioactive until time ends.
I hope she's finally toxic. I do. I know that Tim Canova had some progress with one of his lawsuits, and I know that I got to get him back on. But yeah, they couldn't convince Andrew Gillum to do it too soon.
I don't know if it's
too
too
fresh off a
soon,
loss.
but here's my feeling on that, and you guys can hate me for this as much as you want. If you lost your statewide race, this is looking at you, O'Rourke. Why in the hell do you think you're going to win presidency? So Gillum, it applies the same thing. I'm an equal opportunity type of guy. I don't see how losing your state race, and then O'Rourke, I want to dive into this with losing to Ted fucking Cruz. But all of a sudden, gets a groundswell to run for president. I mean, if we don't hold our own people accountable and we don't hold our own, spheres accountable, because Gillum allegedly was a progressive for a period of time, then that would make us disingenuous. And Gillum running for president is just as it makes as much sense as O'Rourke running for president at this point.
I guarantee they're keeping him on the short list for VP candidates.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
And he was on a shorter list. He was in 2016. He was one of the names being floated by Mother.
What is the lady from Georgia who just recently?
Stacey Abrams.
Yes, she's not completely.
Who has a board? Who has a spot on the board at Neera Tanden's organization, Center for American Progress.
Yeah. But let's dive back into this list because I have more interesting names that no one has ever heard of. Declared March 1st, 2019, the governor of Washington at 68 years old comes in with a big smile on his face and in blue trunks. Jay Inslee. He's the climate guy. He visited every early state but South Carolina, although he cut Democrats in the Palmetto State a sizable check. Like other past chairs of the Democratic Governors Association, he's used the group to burnish his profile and has been very candid about his 2020 intentions. Now, anybody paying attention to politics whatsoever, I don't expect the entire audience. In fact, I expect maybe 1% to 2% of the audience to be this much in the know. He's been talking about climate change. He's been kind of a gangbusters, Jerry Brown level of talking about, needing to establish more green energies, create more environmental regulations, basically try to save our planet at this point so that we don't die in a giant fireball and all that other fun stuff. But the reality is, he doesn't have any name recognition. He's not a sexy pick. He's an old white guy, and he's not bringing any new ideas to the table. So, really, I mean, with the lack of, you would have to be a governor of a major state such as California, New York, or Texas to have nothing backing you up and to become, up into that second tier and first tier. Jay Inslee, noble intent, but he's not going anywhere. Your thoughts, Steve?
I've read some of his climate stuff. It all seems to be end user punishing, going about it the wrong way. Maybe has some good intentions, but there's nothing about the guy that says he wouldn't do what even fucking AOC did, which was corporatize any legislation immediately and remove all of the teeth out of it. And it would be, again, this is why I'm not going to stop saying this. The Green New Deal is fucking this fucking cycles Obamacare. It's
Right.
bad. It's fucking poison.
Right.
And people are gonna be like, oh, but look, we've got blah 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 by 2030 instead of 2050, and you can go, but that report says that's too late. Whether or not you want to believe that, I would still like to see geoengineering incorporated into climate data the way I would like to see fracking incorporated into earthquake data.
Can't argue with that point.
Jay Inslee, he's fucking, if he gains any traction at all, it will be because the DNC is really out of ideas.
Do we have anybody in the audience that's got any questions, comments, or concerns as of yet?
Well, Jay Inslee is on the debate stage, though.
Okay.
I just saw that in the chat.
My next one you'll love too, because this guy's about as bland as vanilla. You're going to need Viagra just to get a heart rate increase when I mention this name. Former Colorado governor, declared March 4th, 2019, at a whopping 67 years old, John Hickenlooper. He's a centrist, business-oriented governor who led the way on gun control and split from his party base on some of the environmental issues. Steve, I know you love you some Hickenlooper.
So I lived in Colorado when he was mayor of Denver. Or maybe governor. I think it was governor when I lived there. Maybe both. I've had it's been a long ride. At any rate, he is another gentrifying bastard. The guy owned a brewery, right?
Right.
A chain brewery that made shitty beer, but a lot of money.
Right.
I know what his vision for the future looks like, because Denver turned into a giant fucking condo with like the 5th biggest traffic jam in America.
Right. And the most interesting airport ever in the history of airports. I'm just throwing it out there.
I wouldn't mind doing a DIA show. That would be fun.
Oh, we got to sometime. Our next victim in the 3rd tier status, and I don't think anybody's going to argue with me on this one, because unless you paid attention to the Obama administration and witnessed, I believe it was 2016, one of his speeches at the convention, the former HUD, Housing and Urban Development Secretary, he declared on January 12, 2019, he's only 44 years old, so he's only just begun, as the Carpenter song goes. I believe it was the Carpenters. It's Julian Castro. He's long tipped as the next big thing in Democratic politics. The former mayor wrote that excitement to a convention keynote address, the cabinet, and then the VP speculation in 2016. Now he's wasted little time assembling a campaign. My thoughts on Mr. Castro, or former Secretary Castro. He's another centrist. He's another pro-corporate, anti-people Democrat that seems to be so
Where's he from
loved by
again?
third-way types.
Where's he from again?
I think he was the mayor of San Antonio, Texas. He's from Texas. He was either the mayor of
Okay.
San Antonio or Houston, one of the two.
Okay. So it's one more person from Texas running because
Right.
Bobby Franny ain't doing it.
Right. Sorry, I should have brought
Okay.
that up.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
our friend from Montana. And we
Real quick,
base on
man,
them.
and we can like we don't have to cover every single one. But like I do want to just reconvey the sense that like all of these people are running from states where splitting the vote is going to be key.
Right, but we need to
Because
talk
they
about Bullock, though.
they don't want a clean victory for anybody
Right.
on the first round, because the only person that looks like they would be capable of getting one would be Bernie Sanders, and that's the last fucking thing that they want.
Okay, so I've got 14 in the third tier, and my last couple of ones, we're going to talk about Bullock real quick, and it's not that he's important, it's not that he's significant, it's the mentality that I kind of want to touch on with this governor of Montana who declared on May 14th, 2019. His claim to fame, his sole thing isn't sweeping legislation in Montana. It isn't essentially bringing more benefits to the people of Montana. It isn't shutting down corporations, stranglehold onto the state of Montana. It isn't even beating back Republicans so badly that the state could possibly, quote unquote, turn blue. Steve Bullock's only claim to fame as the governor of Montana is that he won the election for governor in Montana on a it would be considered GOP by any normal rationale, but as Steve says, in this cartoon world, he somehow has a D by his name. And this is what's enough for Democrats, mind you, to propel you into the conversation to become president, which is nonsense. You can't co-opt the opposition's political views, call yourself a Democrat, and then celebrating the accolades of winning an election when you just basically duped the Montana electorate by saying, I want to do what he does, but I'm going to do it a little bit better.
Well,
that's why I wanted to talk about Bullock.
That's essentially what Joe Biden is doing.
Right.
He's running against Trump. He's Trump with better hair plugs and like less exposure on just how horrible of a fucking human being he is. Like Joe Biden is to the right one of I know. I'm just okay. All right. Okay. I'm just so that's what Bullock is doing. He's running as a lesser known Joe Biden.
We got 3 more left, and the last 2 will probably surprise you, or I guarantee it's going to piss off anybody who watches this video. Okay, so third to last is a representative from Maryland that's a little known outside the New England section of the country. That's Representative John Delaney, and he declared on July 20th, 2017. It seems like it's been that long and nothing's happened for him. He's already spent millions of dollars in Iowa and visited every one of its 99 counties more than 2 years before the first in the nation caucuses. But can he stand out once the rest of the field joins him? No, that's a huge no. He was one of the first people to declare, and yet he's gained no traction in any capacity, whether it be fundraising, sharing, having an increase in the percentage of votes, having the media talk about him in any capacity. Delaney, it was cute. He wasted millions of dollars for no reason. I don't know, other than maybe launching a Senate race in Maryland. But outside of that, I honestly don't know. He's a Democrat who's 56 years old. Again, what is significant is July 20th, 2017 was when he declared. So come this July, he'll have been in the race for 2 years and moved nowhere. He's wasting people's time. And again, as Steve and I both said, splintering the vote. That's all he's there for. Your thoughts?
I mean, he's following orders. He's a party guy. When you get elected to higher office, you do it not with the intention of staying where you are. You want that to be a springboard to something, and uh, the more levels you unlock, you know, the more power you want. Um, so it doesn't surprise me that everyone who gets a little taste of power wants the White House, but they're encouraged by people who have a separate agenda, who don't want um, John Delaney to necessarily become president, but do want him to run because it benefits the overall scheme
Right.
that needs to take place. Um, to what extent these people, their egos allow them to rationalize or talk themselves out of you're being a fucking puppet, dude. I don't know. I don't. Um, I'm sure he doesn't think he's being played, but I don't know how he can justify still spending money on that campaign
You can't.
unless he's being encouraged to stay in for reasons other than, dude, you've got a shot.
Hypothetically speaking, I mean, if we're talking from a pure number standpoint, statistically, yeah, of course. I mean, theoretical physics dictates that anything can happen that you can think of. There's a possibility of literally anything happening. So, in that realm, sure, you got to crack at it. And I lied. I had to add one more to the third tier, and I'll get to this one immediately because the last two, like I said, I think are going to be a little bit more controversial. That's New York New York Mayor de Blasio. He's the candidate that no one asked for. He's the candidate that is most famous for arguing with the cops and having the cops basically tell him to fuck off, and he telling the cops to fuck off. Um, Crime has gone down. If I'm not mistaken, gun violence has gone down. I want to make sure real quick before I say anything any further on that. It's
What
a
I love
huge.
about Bill de Blasio is that I read an article about his gym put a notice on the door saying nobody who belonged to the gym was allowed to run for president in 2020.
And he's allegedly a progressive.
He's a fucking douchebag. He's like, I mean, he's whatever. He just nobody wants a guy to run. He's like the only person polling in negative numbers, like for real.
Right.
Like
Right.
there's just it.
He's the candidate nobody wanted, and yet somebody deserved him.
He's another fucking rich douchebag who wants to look out for his particular set of rich douchebags.
Well,
Um,
that's essentially it. Now these last two, again, I said we're going to be controversial. One is wholly off the inadequacy, the incompetence, and the pathetic nature of the campaign. The other one is because the media, the Democratic establishment, and a whole horde of establishment aligned groups have gone against this person and made it practically impossible for this person to move up into any other tier. We're going to start with the one that is so grossly incompetent. He couldn't even beat Ted Cruz in the state of Texas. He declared March 14, 2019 to some huge fanfare. 24 hours, he raised, I think it was $6 million. Most of that was corporate. His small donations, he didn't even release the amount of small donations that he received. He's a joke. If you can't beat Ted Cruz, and I get it, it's the state of Texas, but don't give me that nonsense. Enough people were tired of Ted Cruz that they were willing to support just about anybody. And this faux punk, who is a corporatist married to a very rich woman, if I'm not mistaken, has no idea of the actual struggles of the average American person. Decided, I don't know how you come to this conclusion where you go, I lost the Senate race to an absolute evil, imbecile, moron, lump of clay that's been just piss poorly shapen senator. And I want to translate that loss into becoming president of the United States. Beto O'Rourke and his followers, I don't know if there's like a Jim Jones type of cult thing going there. I'm glad to see that he's fallen off the face of the planet and his supporters have been shut down. They've transition to other candidates. Obviously, most of them go to Joe Biden, anyways. But Beto O'Rourke, that was absolute nonsense. And to even put the word progressive next to him, look at his policies. I went through on People of the 99% what he voted for. And this was back when he was still popular, and I got fire from all sides for pointing out his voting record and his background and showing the absolute absurdity of him being called a progressive. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. You read somebody's record out loud. That's a personal attack now. Beto O'Rourke got billed, Bobby Franny got billed as a progressive because a lot of progressive media outlets gave him cover.
TYT.
The Young
one of the biggest ones. Let's call it out.
The Young Turks specifically gave Bobby Franny a lot of cover. When you're already so turned off to regular media and you maybe fucking just didn't figure out over the last couple of years that the Young Turks were a fucking deeply cynical, fake fucking progressive news organization that's in it for your fucking money, and fucking Cenk Uygur is probably laughing in a fucking tracksuit right now at the thought of it. Like, fuck those guys.
Emma Vinland, I think is her last name. I have
Emma Vigland. Yeah.
She's brilliant. She's a really smart and very consistent in her positions. And I appreciated a lot of her coverage on some of the stories that TYT didn't deem worthy of covering.
So they had fucking, I mean, yes, you're right. He lost to the Zodiac Killer. He's a fucking, he's a bad candidate. He's a Republican by any other name except for his dad gave him a Mexican nickname in case he ran for office and wanted to appeal to the Latino voters in his community. That's a true fucking story. I'm not making that up.
Which is racist as fuck. Let's be real. That is.
But yeah, his wife is a billionaires. Whatever. I don't. He's a corporate empty suit that plays a fucking game. Who knows how to raise money?
He was in a punk band.
No, he wasn't. He was in a fucking mall rock band that was like some kind of emo fucking punk piece of shit. Whatever. At any rate. At any rate. At any rate, he's there because he's fucking playing his role.
Right.
Whatever his role is, he is fucking. If there is anyone who's just malleable, it's fucking Bobby Franny, dude. The whole fucking shtick with standing on fucking countertops and shit. Okay.
All right. So
that wasn't his idea. That wasn't his idea.
No.
Somebody told him to do that, and he went, okay, and he fucking did it.
No, I totally agree with you. Hence why I had such vitriol when I brought it up.
It didn't work, and somebody was like, look, okay, dude, you're going to have to fucking stop standing on fucking countertops and tables like a motherfucking idiot and get out there and give a real stump speech. And what did he do? He went to Iowa and he stood on a fucking tree stump.
It's different. All right,
why are people still laughing at me? I gave a real stump speech this time.
On a tree stump.
Did you?
This last one, I want to say before the audience crucifies me and sets me on fire. And before I say this one, I would really appreciate those in the audience share this particular video because this one is both laying out who the presidential candidates are.
Oh my God, you'll have to like cut it into a million pieces, man. There's no way.
So far, why they're shit candidates. And I really think it's a slap in the Democratic establishment's faces that Steve and I are going through this list and breaking it down on what the Democrat Party is essentially trying to do to you. So this needs to be shared far and wide before I go into this last candidate. A little bit of a preamble. I rarely do this, so I want to take full advantage of preamble status. I deeply and profoundly respect this particular candidate. I feel a kinship with this candidate. I have all the respect in the world, and I think this candidate would make a remarkable president or a vice president down the road. So when I say this, it isn't with glee. It isn't to stick it to this person's fans and supporters. I profoundly respect her. But again, this is because the establishment has stacked the deck against her. The media has already gone on the Assyrian Assad bullshit as making her not competent or correct to run for president. And that's Representative Tulsi Gabbard, who declared on January 11th of this year. Profound, deep respect for her. She's been a consistent voice for policies. She hasn't shifted. She hasn't played the game of prevailing wins, watching poll numbers to see what she should say next. She did things because she felt they were right. She had a backbone, and she continues to have a backbone, but she's a third-tier candidate. And unless her supporters really get others to come in and do an almost guerrilla-style Sanders 2016 primary type of situation now, I can't call her a viable candidate, not because of her, but because the establishment has literally stacked everything against her. So yell at me as you will. Call me evil. Do what you got to do. But that's your list of your third tiers. Steve, your thoughts?
She got that Joe Rogan bump, though.
You gotta love Joe. We all love Joe.
No, man.
I love me some JRE. Let's be real.
I love that we live in a cartoon where Joe Rogan has a platform where he reaches fucking 13 million people, and Rachel Maddow can't get 700,000 people to watch her show after she got exposed for being a fucking complete and total fraud. That's what I appreciate about the cartoon. I appreciate that I'm allowed a platform, small as
Exactly.
the platform is right now. That's fucking take advantage when you live in a cartoon.
Exactly. So, I mean,
Tulsi Gabbard, in any other world, Tulsi Gabbard would be a really seriously considered candidate by everyone, but she pissed off Mother.
Yeah.
And she said, no, the debates are a little fucked up, and I can no longer continue to be vice chair of this organization, and I'm going to go ahead and resign, and I'll throw my hat behind Bernie Sanders. And nobody forgot about that. Nobody did. So she's kind of been in this like no fucks sort of place where right after they fucking did her really dirty, and there's letters of withdrawal of support from prominent Democrats that came her way like immediately afterward, and like, hey, we're gonna fucking wreak havoc on whatever agenda you may have in Congress. It's just not gonna happen. So she came out and she authored the Stop Funding Terrorists Act like immediately after. Okay, here's why that's never gonna see the light of day, but she's done that, and I respect, insofar as I respect any politician, I respect the lack of give a damn that she's shown on the campaign trail. I thought that every time she gets to the mic, she should say, what the fuck good is it voting for a Democrat if that Democrat's going to do everything Trump does, but fucking doesn't have mean tweets, Like,
right.
In any kind of a sane world, that would be the debate. It would be, but it's, you're an Assad apologist, or you were raised in a Hindu cult, and what about what you said when you were 20? And fucking what's your relationship with Modi? And like nobody else is getting asked these questions, dude. Joe
Right.
Biden's got ties to Ukraine like a motherfucker. You
But I
know,
thought the Democrats
the
weren't
only other
for
person
women
that get
getting into
asked,
positions of power. I thought they wanted a woman president.
yeah,
Why
yeah,
not go with one who's actually worthwhile, as opposed to one who felt like they were entitled to the
the
presidency
big
as though it was
club
the
doesn't
monarchy and she was next
reward.
in line?
You don't get to stay in the big club if you step out of line.
Right.
Or if you do step out of line, they get your fucking head right real quick.
She's fought back though, and I do have a deep, profound respect. And there's no glee putting her in third tier status. So I'll ask you and your audience: is there anybody in the third tier that you disagreed with that you may want to go? Hey, no, wait. I'll argue with you about it because my analysis is pretty spot on without sounding too egotistical. But I laid forth the reason why I believe those 15 are third tiers. I think time will show that I'm correct. But if you guys have like maybe somebody you want to add, somebody you want to subtract or something, let me know for sure. Before we move on to the second tier, which is much smaller.
I'm looking at the chat here though. I do like the comparison of Ted Cruz to Grandpa Munster's love child minus the talent. That is nice, Miss Tree.
Beautiful.
So I
Is there
no,
anybody you
there
think of that you would argue with me?
at 1%, she's not viable. She's not. That doesn't mean that it'll be a long road for her to get 3%. It really will. So no, I don't disagree with you putting her there. I think that
I'm not happy about it.
I think that the hope of progressives and the fear of the establishment is that because she's a fellow at the Sanders Institute, they have a fucking deal. And I've tried to explore this a few times on the show and I haven't really gotten much information out of it, but I haven't talked to anybody inside like Tulsi's camp. So if anybody knows anybody, but I don't believe for a second that they're going to allow Tulsi Gabbard on the same debate stage as Bernie Sanders. I don't care what Tom Perez says about his fucking lottery. I have no reason to trust that guy.
Yeah,
Why would I think that when the DNC can admit in open court that they're not entitled to have a free and fair process, why would they suddenly fucking reverse on that? Any amount of ass kissing by Ro Khanna isn't going to fucking change that.
I don't disagree. And here's where it gets interesting, the second tier. Now, the second tier, if we're going to go back to the beginning, I said these candidates can break either way, contingent upon somebody from the first tier massively fucking up, essentially. They're going to stay in the second tier. They'll probably be gone for sure by Super Tuesday. Now, for all those not doctrinated into the political process, Super Tuesday is a whole slew of states, which is a vast majority of the votes you're going to need to get the majority of 2152, I believe, is the delegate count that you're going to need to secure the nomination for Democratic nominee for president. These second tiers, they have name recognition. They have some bumps from, a history. They're all senators, for the record. So you can look at their voting record and laugh at them when they try to come off as progressive. Or super centrist. A radical centrist is in this group. So never thought I'd hear a radical centrist, those two words used in the same sentence, but here we are.
Pat, for that one, that's Pat the Burner, Peter Douche's liaison term. If I would give the brother some credit there.
Oh, you've got to. I definitely did not, nor would I firmly believe in citing those that come up with brilliance. The radical centrist is on this list, but let's wade into the waters a little bit. Let's not just dive into the freezing cold section. Let's start with a fan favorite, someone who is just beloved by the masses, someone who is a doppelganger of the former secretary, former senator, former first lady Hillary Rodham Clinton. And in fact, She's so much a doppelganger that she represents her particular district when it comes to the U.S. Senate. She's a 52-year-old heavy hitter. She declared January 15th, 2019. Her name is Kirsten Gillibrand, a one-time Blue Dog Democrat, reads centrist conservative Democrat, Republican, who now says she's ashamed of her conservative-leaning past. Her determined approach to fighting sexual assault and misconduct has led to conflict with some in her party who did not like her criticism of Bill Clinton and Al Franken, former senator of Minnesota. She says Democrats can't exempt their friends from their own high standards. Now, there's a litany of things wrong with the honorable senator from New York. I'd want to let Steve start this off because I want to find some details that I could back up about the senator. And I know Steve has a long history with speaking about many senators, but this one in particular. So, Steve, your thoughts on Senator Gillibrand being second tier status?
So let me just say that I feel really fucking old to know that there's a candidate for president named Kirsten and she's 52. Like, fuck, that's heavy. She's a right winger. Like, she's a fucking far right imperialist who has done more to push Hillary Clinton's foreign policy as Secretary of State through the Senate in her position as adjunct Hillary whisperer to the U.S. Senate. Yeah, she really pissed a lot of people off when she fucking shoved Al Franken under the bus and like tried to build a career on it. I don't I know she's got a lot of sway with like New York donors, but again, she's just another candidate from New York out of like three now, I think, or three or four. I do believe that her own ego is allowing her to think that she's not being fucking encouraged to run because it helps them in the long run splitting the vote.
She's a corporatist. To summarize her, she would be moderately left on social issues, and she takes a hands-off approach when it comes to corporations and business, which is essentially said she'll turn a blind eye, like many in the Democrat Party, many in the establishment, turning a blind eye to their corporate paymasters. She's, at best, GOP light, at worst, a mainstream Republican who puts a D by her name because it is the most opportune thing to do in the state of New York if you want to hold higher office. If your last name isn't what's his face, Cuomo, or what's the other family there. Really, at the end of the day, she supports the Hillary Clinton feminism, not intersectional feminism. She comes out during the Me Too movement that occurred. That was her huge claim to fame, if you will. She's had complaints by her staff for being a tyrant. One of those just endearing things that you want from a presidential candidate. She's
she throwing binders like Cloud Boot Jar?
Yeah, we can go that route. Gillibrand, to me, is a weak second tier. I would have thrown her into third tier status, but she does have the backing of New York money. New York is a strong state when it comes to Democratic politics. So she's not necessarily out, but she hasn't gained traction for all intents and purposes since her declaration on January 15th. It's pure name recognition, especially after the Al Franken fiasco.
Oh, yeah, and Chris in the chat points out that she doesn't hesitate to like whip out John McCain's corpse whenever it's convenient for her to bash Trump over the head with.
Right.
So
I think she was the one who said that John McCain was reciting the names of dictators during the inauguration of Donald Trump or something like that. Was that Klobuchar or Gillibrand who said that?
Who gives a fuck?
Because they're interchangeable. They're the same candidate.
Yeah, you dye the hair and pencil in some wrinkles and like add a steak comb and a fucking salad comb, and then like your heavy duty stabbing comb.
Here's
You
my
gotta have a
favorite
comb
one.
for every occasion. It's like you gotta have a harmonica for every key. You gotta have a comb for every occasion. You need your
Jesus
Swiss
Christ.
Army comb for when you go camping. You gotta have your K-bar comb for
Yeah,
when you really need to stab a motherfucker. You know?
yeah,
Yeah. And not have a hair out of place. And I'm giving that my I'm running for office knuckle point because that's what it deserves.
You don't do the knife point. The knife point's the most effective. Let's take a look at my favorite radical centrist because I mean she's really setting the world on fire, being from Minnesota, and taking on both the left and the right. She's taking a very Howard Schultz-esque approach to running, except she doesn't have the quote-unquote independent status. She's a member of the DFL, Democratic Farm League from Minnesota.
Yeah.
This would be Amy Klobuchar, who is literally oozing Republican juice from her Democratic pores. She's a nonsense candidate who is a quote unquote radical centrist and is a direct mockery and makes a mockery of progressives and the left, saying that we're too radical, that we're pulling the party entirely in the wrong direction, that we don't understand Midwestern voters' values, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't give a rat's ass about Midwestern voters. Let's be real. Ohio's been a bellwether for stupidity for a long time. When it comes to Midwestern values, it's a bunch of crap from the 1960s and 1970s that don't apply in this world and will keep the status quo going. So Amy Klobuchar is literally a caricature of all the things that are wrong with democratic politics. And I think she's an offense to anyone who has any, I don't know, a semblance of common sense and has a basic understanding of hypocrisy. So, Senator Klobuchar, you win my award for just mind-blowing candidate in this race. Out of 23 people, you take the cake. Steve, please go crazy.
I know people from Minnesota. I
Hey.
I do. And when they throw things at me, it's always like hugs or cannabis or sometimes kratom or like music. Like that's what I'm used to getting hurled at by Minnesotans. So and I understand that this is a state that produced Michelle Bachmann, but holy fuck, man, the DFL used to represent Paul Wellstone, who like may have been like one of the last human beings ever to be in office, and to go from that to Dianne Feinstein's mini me, um, like
Not even an attractive mini me,
so
just a less attractive mini me.
Dianne Feinstein is American Thatcher in every way, shape, and form. And her fucking husband is a fucking complete and total predator in every form. He's fucking like the, the Bloom investment, the fucking real estate scams that guy has been involved in over the years. So watching like Minnie Feinstein try to do that thing that like Hillary Clinton does where she pretends to be human is probably the only endearing thing about this. It really like that's about all it's really about all I have to say because I would put her in the third tier. I would.
I would too, but again, name recognition at this point is a huge factor in my separating third tier, second tier, and first tier. Because while realistically Klobuchar is not going to do a damn thing, she has name recognition, which brings in money. She is still
She's a
bringing in
great
money.
candidate for the fucking I'm gonna call the cops on these kids for having fun in the park.
Right.
For those people, for people who are like super fucking NIMBY about it, but like don't have the guts to vote for someone as dark as Kamala Harris, like a second time, right? Like they checked off, voted for a black guy on their list. They're cool. They don't have to do it again. Those
which is
people,
sad.
she appeals to those guys. She does.
That's sad. We'll get into Senator Harris here in a bit, and I'll give you some intriguing reasons why I'm a strong opposition to her presidency or the possibility of winning the Democratic ticket. But let's move on to the second tier. Another one is a heavy hitter. He's a huge name. He's been equated with being the next President Obama from the Democratic circles. He's a very cozy with the super rich. In fact, he was one of the individuals. I think he specifically said, "Let me see if I can find a quote." He wanted Democrats to stop attacking private equity at one point. He is the former mayor and senator, current senator from the state of New Jersey. He also opposed a Sanders bill that would lower, Jesus Christ, fuck off you. Excuse me. I was building up to a crescendo there. Back bill that would have paved the way for importing lower cost prescription drugs from Canada. He has about as many progressive bona fides as Ted Cruz does, and that is Senator Cory Booker. He's uber cozy when it comes to being with the wealthy. He wants to protect, he does it publicly, he doesn't even hide it. He wants to protect the wealthy's ability to keep stealing money from the masses. He's a joke. He declared on February 1st of 2019, he's 50. And his only real positive, his one good thing, I suppose, is he is a master orator. He can go out there and he could give a hell of a speech. He can get an audience emotionally involved. He's very good when it comes to giving a speech. That's one thing I won't take away from him. But when you look up the word corporatist, you're going to see a picture of Senator Booker. And that is a huge issue from anyone who calls himself a progressive, anyone who calls themselves a human being, not to sell out this country further to corporatists. Cory Booker is running for the corporatists. I mean, he's literally the face of what's wrong with democratic politics, while Klobuchar is ideally the personality of what is wrong with democratic politics. Care to tell me I'm wrong, Steve?
I want to start like whatever it takes, man. A Kickstarter, a GoFundMe, whatever, dude, to find out how much Rosario Dawson is being paid to be his beard, and I want to offer her more money, or like whatever, dude, like whatever it takes to just get that to stop.
Let me say this. You got to let me say this. And if anybody knows Rosario, I need you to send this portion to her. Rosario,
please.
You have been the love of my life for the last decade. You are a brilliant actress, a brilliant activist, a brilliant and beautiful woman who single-handedly took Clerks 2 and made it watchable. Sorry, Kevin. I love your movies, but Rosario really, in anything that she does, takes the show. She's a brilliant woman. I love you so much. Just short of the fanatic level where I'm staring at you through your window going like this. Love me. But I need you just walk away from Senator Booker. You are so much better. It doesn't have to be with me, even though that'd be preferable. But please, for the love of God, Rosario, you're brilliant. You're beautiful. You could do so much better. Please. All right, Steve, go ahead.
If you remake anything in the next year and a half, as long as it's not that fucking frigid kiss that Alan Tipper did, we're gonna be cool.
Hot.
Okay. Cory Booker is the Democratic face for charter schools, for
privatizing everything.
Well, I honestly, I can't believe he's a second tier candidate. I know that a small amount of people like him, but again, man, New Jersey, he's there because he sees this as a career. He knows he's not going to get elected president. This is a fucking stepping stone for him. You know, like a lot of people pitch this as an audition to these guys. Here's what people can expect of you in the coming years. when you are more viable to be on the world stage. And these are people that don't have a realistic picture at all on fucking climate change or the fucking worker rebellion that's coming. Like these are people who live in a fucking insulated bubble where people like Rosario Dawson can be bribed to be their beard. And I hope that somebody again starts a GoFundMe to fucking offer her more.
Rosario, you can do better. I'm right here. Steve can give
Actually,
you my number. Steve will give you my number. Call me.
I wanna say real quick though, I don't mean that. I don't. I think if you're gonna give anybody money, it probably shouldn't be Rosario Dawson. You know, you
I'm
should
glad for that clarification.
maybe support independent media with it, or fucking go fucking buy yourself whatever's necessary to grow your own food, or there's
I have a respect for her. I do. I'm obviously in love with the woman, but I also deeply, profoundly respect her, and I wish she would get away from that nonsense. Okay, so we have two more candidates in the second tier, and I think you're going to find one relatively controversial. But I'm going to go with Mayor Pete in the second tier status. They're trying really hard to push Mayor Pete on everybody. This is an overt Hillary Clinton style type of campaign where they're pushing the fact that he's happens to be a homosexual male who's married, has a family, which is fantastic. It's awesome. I'm not sure how that's a qualifier for president because JFK had a family. Ronald Reagan had a family. I mean, we can name a crap load of people who had a family and was utter mistakes as president.
and there's probably not a single one of those fucking frat boys that didn't take a little dick. All right, let's be clear about that. Okay.
I look at Mayor Pete and I don't look at homosexuality. That's not the thing I think of when I think of him. I think of him firing the first African American chief of police in his city. I look at him as creating more gentrification, making it harder for those who are poor in his city. I see his record of economic stimulus as being nonsense, service industry oriented, low paying jobs. But they're trying really hard. They're trying really super hard to push Mayor Pete. That's the only reason why I'm in second tier status, because he doesn't bring anything new to the table. He's absolute nonsense. He is a former vet. I believe he served in Afghanistan. He's a millennial. He's only 37 years old. He's around my age. He's what the Democrats think that progressives want, because they really are out of touch with what the left is and what it represents now and what we're going after. I believe he was supposed to quell us. He was supposed to make us go, oh, they finally got us. That's a guy we got to support right there. It's so superficial and nonsense. And if you look even for a minute into his record, you'll see that he's a joke. But I put him in the second tier specifically because of the hard push by the establishment to get this guy out there. Anybody wants to argue or debate that point, feel free to, but I think I'm right.
I feel like he's going to be in the running for most viable empty suit to steal the nomination from Bernard Sanders. I do. He's a fucking CIA Democrat. Let's be really, really clear about this. We know that there are a fuck ton of Democrats with intelligence community backgrounds. Mayo Pete is one of them. I don't give a fuck that he hung out with the fucking little Judas goat that is Al Sharpton. And like, I don't know why going to Sylvia's is a fucking thing. Like, maybe it means like you're gonna play ball. Bernie Sanders went to Sylvia's. As far as I know, he hasn't been back to Killer Mike's barbershop yet.
And that's nonsense, because Killer Mike was, and still is one of the most passionate progressives out there that stood up for Senator Sanders. If he doesn't bring Mike into the equation in some capacity,
he's introduced him a couple of times. It's not like the Killer Mike is advocating for Bernie Sanders. I don't. Again, I've got my own thoughts about why capitalism isn't the answer to capitalism just because it switches from one particular set of people to another. Like, I don't think that's the answer. I wish black wealth on the community until we can fucking get the dilithium crystal energy harness. I do. I really do. But I also think that going to school with Black Socialists of America on Twitter is a great idea. Um, Once again, man, uh, he's CIAP. He is. This is 100% the intelligence community's guy to go in and fucking with a smile on his face saying absolutely nothing, do even more to expand both domestic surveillance and fucking covert actions abroad. He would be the one to privatize the military while
for sure.
demanding national service.
For sure. That's
Uh,
unequivocal.
so I that's why I think he's on the short list for most viable empty suit to fucking wind up with the nomination on the second round.
I totally agree with you. And now we're getting to our last member of the second tier. I told you, a substantially smaller crowd. That would be a woman who has a questionable lineage. She is a senator from the state of Massachusetts. She declared on February 9th, 2019, although it's been known, it's not been a good kept secret, that she was going to run for presidency. And that would be Senator Elizabeth Warren, with whom, how do I loathe thee? Let me count the ways. She's lost all respect amongst those on the left and progressives for her consistent sellouts. First being not speaking up about what happened to Senator Sanders, and then backing up former Secretary of State, former Senator, and former First Lady Hillary Clinton. Um, what can I say about her? She's the positives are her wanting to go after Wall Street. I'll give her that. Um, she's not a firebrand. She's not a populist. She's very flimsy when it comes to real substantive issues like Medicare for all, our economic policies. Um, she's a very weak candidate. And the only reason why I have her in the second tier status is strictly name recognition. She doesn't bring anything new to the table. She's not going to garner enough votes. I think she shot herself in the foot when she tried to call out Trump with the Ancestry or 23andMe or whatever she used to look up her ancestry. I think that was stupid. Whoever was giving her information on what she should do to combat that narrative hopefully never works in politics again, because that's embarrassing. And if she thought of it herself, then she should just stick with being senator of Massachusetts. It's
There,
nonsense.
Jay.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
sure.
okay. I'll tell you who thought of it though, and we know this. Hillary's consultants got split up initially between Kamala, Warren, and Gillibrand, and I think Amy Klobuchar picked up the last couple.
Right.
We know Obama's guys originally went with Beto. Some of them are still there. Like the DCCC passes a rule or does this thing where they're going to blacklist anybody who works for progressive consultants, but they keep these fucking people with really bad ideas on board because they don't have to win. They just have to stop any kind of shift leftward. It's
Right.
all they have to do. That's their fucking job. Winning is secondary to that.
Oh, we lost you. Well, just in case, I'll carry it for a second. Next will be our first tier. Before I get into that, if you guys have any arguments, anything that you want to say against who I brought up, Booker, Gillibrand, Klobuchar, Warren, and Mayor Pete as the second tier, let me know. Give me a reason why you think I'm horribly wrong, or if you agree, go crazy. And if you could, again, I can't help but beg that you share this. Get your friends, have them watch it, have a conversation, have this thing spread like wildfire. Because I really feel like the more we inform, the better off the electorate is. Instead of just listening to the mainstream's BS on why this candidate is the greatest thing since sliced bread or that candidate is the greatest thing since sliced bread, um, facts need to come to light. These people's voting records, their history, things of that nature, it's all fair game when it comes to running for any position in politics. It doesn't matter if it's city council or president of the United States. I try to keep it strictly policy oriented.